he gets transported to an entirely different world alone, where he is forced to fight with monsters and goblins to survive each day. Nothing changes though, as even back in his own world Haru was a total lonely loser with no bitches and a future darker than my black hole. No one ever paid attention to this dipshit because he never fit in with any of the class groups, which were divided into the group of nasty delinquents, the school hoes, the Sigma Sam Sulek followers, the disgusting sweaty nerds, and finally the good girls with a stick up their ass. He puts his head on the desk again, knowing that there is no place for a dork like him in this world, when suddenly all the classmates start acting like great idiots as they stare at a golden glowing circle emerging in the classroom. Since Haru is a dweeb just like you all, he has already read all the mangas and knows that they are going to get transported to another world. But it's too much work for him, so he decides to bail and literally tries to walk away from the situation. Unfortunately, the door is shut tightly by Flex Seal, so even with a lot of damage, he can't break the door to escape. Soon the magic circle covers the entire classroom and slowly the students start getting sucked in. But Haru has watched way too many Mission Impossible movies and he jumps up the air duct to escape. Luck is not on his side, though, as the circle enters the air duct and sucks him into a white endless void. He looks around wondering where the hell is his entire class and waits for an ugly-ass king with a smoking hot daughter to greet him. But nothing happens. He soon spots an old fuck running towards him and trying to interact in sign language for some reason. Somehow Haru manages to understand the old-ass man as he realizes that all his classmates were summoned before him and were transported to a different world after choosing a special skill. The old man tells him to follow him as he needs to choose a skill as well, but out of 50 skills, 43 have been already chosen, so there are no cheat skills available anymore. He realizes that he will have to take a lame-ass skill and somehow survive in the new world. But his hopes and dreams shatter once again when he notices that a jellyfish has better skills than the ones remaining for him. He realizes that he can never even survive a single day with these abilities and starts shaking the old man like a maraca. He shouts at the old man to stock up with better skills or learn how to count better than and not summon more people if he doesn't have enough skills. The old man ends up snapping and pushes him away, claiming that a person like him with the ick of a bowling ball wouldn't survive even with the best skills, so he simply gives him all the remaining skills and pushes him down to the new world. He can't believe his eyes when he turns around to see a huge forest surrounding him while he stands there all alone scared. He suddenly spots a pouch on the ground and picks it up to find out that it has unlimited carrying capacity, which is a pretty decent item, but even with that, everything inside of it is as basic as my girlfriend. He soon does a drip check and tries to check his stats, but suddenly 2 dices appear on the screen. He tosses them and they turn to M on both. He has no idea what the hell it means, but the stats tell him to put all that on a single skill. He wonders whether M means minus or something, so he decides to play it safe and gambles it all on the luck stat. To his utter surprise, the M turns out to mean maximum, and now his luck stats are turned up to the maximum. He also finds out that since he is such a lonely incel, God has given him a pity ability with which he can tame wild beasts. He looks around to see whether any of his classmates are around, but there is no one in sight, so he decides to move forward and make his own house by taking inspiration from the 2 guys on YouTube that make houses from mud. He starts walking through the forest, when he starts getting weird that some huge monster will peek-a-boo him, so he takes out another skill item known as the contact lenses. To his surprise, the moment he puts it on, he gets the ability to see the stats of different things, which is a very important and helpful ability. He realizes that these abilities seem to be much more than what their name implies and happily moves forward as he checks his surroundings to find herbs that can improve his health, antivenom mushrooms, and much more. Coupled with his endless bag, he can easily collect as much as he wants and sell them as medicine for a huge profit. After rehydrating himself like a true Sigma male, he starts walking through the forests once again, where he suddenly finds an opening to a cave. He prays to the god that there are no monsters inside and then enters it to find anything of use. The cave soon turns very dark, so he takes out his lantern and magic tent, which he can easily set up here and live peacefully. By the time night fell, Haru made himself more comfortable than Bear Grylls as he collects twigs and with his temperature magic, ignites them on fire, which will also keep the beasts away. He checks his stats once again only to find out that a bunch of his skills got leveled up. But he is too tired to check them out, so he ends up dozing off. The next morning, he wakes up with a jolt and checks the surrounding area to make sure he is still safe and realizes that his monster-repelling techniques must have worked perfectly. He starts feeling hungry, so he lights another fire and takes out his pan before searing some mushrooms and beef jerky like a true food YouTuber. The food turns out to be pretty good, and he wonders whether he can live a life here as a muscled farmer, but realizes that he has no protein powder, so he goes out of the cave once again where he finds a bunch of herbs which can help him gain some muscles. While collecting the herbs, he hears a commotion behind him and finds a bunch of stupid goblins picking up shit from the ground. He immediately gets scared like the massive bitch he is and hides behind some bushes, while the brainless goblins start singing Skibidi Toilet. That's where Haru draws the line and takes out his stick before he can get affected by that brain rot. He wonders whether his wood will be enough to deal with the two goblins, but just to be safe he puts on some protection, and then rushes towards them before hitting one of the goblins on his big fat head. This wakes something up in him as he starts whacking the poor beast like a pinata till he gets knocked out cold on the floor. The other goblin gets scared, but attacks Haru anyways. Fortunately for Haru, the goblin's attacks are pretty easy to read, so he easily dodges the strikes before whacking him on the head, and then firing a small magic blast that seals the deal. After that he washes his face as the sun starts setting and decides to head back home as he worked a lot today. After reaching back into his cave, he roasts some mushroom like a total hobo, and checks his stats only to find out that multiple abilities have been leveled up. This is a very good news, but at the same time he wonders what will the goblins do with him if they find him in an empty cave all alone. He quickly shakes the terrifying thoughts away and quickly warms up a little with some exercise before heading back to bed. The next morning, he wakes up once again only to find mushrooms for breakfast, which is getting annoying already. He wonders whether he can find some meat, but immediately remembers how the vegans of his class would eat him alive if he ever said that. He quickly gets up once again and boosts his stats with some magic before heading out for the day with his trusty wood in his hand. He soon finds an item on the ground which again turns out to be a shitty mushroom. He throws it down to the floor and starts searching for meat which grows on trees like a total imbecile. Soon he comes to his senses and decides that he should simply start working on his magic skills, and boosts his stats once again. After that he starts running through the forest, and to his surprise, his speed has increased several times, as his body feels very light and fast. Moreover, even his attacks seem to be quicker and stronger, so he decides to test this out on a group of goblins nearby. He immediately jumps in the battle and slaps the first goblin with his wood before smacking the second one on the head as well. This seems to enrage the goblins though, as the jacked one grabs a club, but Haru hides behind some bushes like a total bitch and sneaks away while the goblins look for him. He decides that he has had enough for a day and returns back to his cave where he thinks about the things he did that day before he starts working on some DIY projects like creating an IKEA table after several tries. By the next morning though, he has gotten pretty good at it and manages to assemble a stool and a coffee table all on his own. He decides to tighten his security as well now that he knows how to build stuff, so he creates a wooden gate at the entrance of his cave to make sure no one can enter without his permission. That night, he goes out to hunt some small game as he can't live without meat any longer. Thankfully for him, the luck is on his side as he manages to spot a rabbit running away in the forest. But his beastly desire to eat meat completely overpowers him, and he manages to catch it like a feral cat. He starts smiling like a monster at the thought of the delicious meat when suddenly he feels the presence of other people in the area and gets on alert mode. He looks around and, to his surprise and dismay, finds the group of delinquents walking towards him. This really scares him as he doesn't want to get involved with them, so he hides behind some bushes and starts walking away quietly. But his idiot senses start tingling again. He quickly uses his special sight abilities, which lets him see everything around him, and to his surprise, he spots the class thoughts walking towards him from one side, while the average Sam Sulek enjoyers and the creepy nerds walk from the other side. He decides that he wants nothing to do with them, when he suddenly spots the vegan girls led by the class president. He lets the bunny go and wonders whether he should meet with the class president since she has been nice to him and he has known her since first grade. But he stops himself with sheer will as he thinks about how amazing it feels to be his own boss, and he decides that he will conquer this world alone. While celebrating his incel status, he ends up getting carried away and makes some noise which immediately gains the attentions of the delinquents. Scared that he will get discovered and wedgied, he immediately jumps into the bushes, hiding away from the delinquent. The smug cunt, however, notices that something is wrong and immediately walks over to the bushes to check. But thankfully a bunny saves Haru, while the delinquents turn away bored and leave. He decides to follow them towards a riverbank where they all sit down and start talking about everyday things that guys usually talk about. Haru is disgusted by their fatherless behavior and realizes that the class rep is very sensible and won't ever fall for guys like these. Suddenly, he notices that the delinquents have grabbed one of the nerds named Tanaka and are using him as Google to get all the answers about their abilities. They soon head upstream to find the rest of the classmates, but Haru is not interested in that, so he returns back to his cave and starts cooking up some shrooms while checking his stats. He notices that his loner skill got leveled up because he decided to stay away from his classmates, but even after this he is still level 3. This is probably because of his skill known as the Master of None, which is basically ADHD as he can't focus on leveling up a single skill. But at the same time he is pretty good at almost everything. The other skill named Blockhead, however, is a total mystery to him, as it just sounds like an insult. He decides to get rid of his anxieties by stress, eating like an average American girl, and heads back to sleep. Later that night he is unable to sleep as someone is making a lot of noise outside, so he heads out, expecting to find the delinquents. But instead he finds the nerds in an all-out battle against the goblins. They seem to be as skilled in martial arts as Joe Biden, which makes Haru chuckle as he wonders whether he should help these dipshits out. This all changes though when he checks their stats, only to find out that they have amazing cheat skills compared to his leftover skills and are much higher level than him as well. He remembers that his class is filled with top students, whether it be athletes, smart nerds, or children of celebrities, which makes him the only average guy in the class. He decides to head back to sleep as the nerds can defend themselves, when suddenly he feels a presence which puts him on alert mode. He turns around and notices 2 goblins creeping up on the nerds from behind, ready to shove their clubs up their asses, but Haru feels bad for them and decides to lend a helping hand. He immediately jumps in and whacks away both the goblins with a single swing of his thick stick, which knocks the goblins off. The nerds turn around, surprised to see Haru here, but they thank him for his help while Haru leads them back towards his cave. The nerds are shocked to see such an amazing cave, which is completely spotless and filled with all kinds of useful items and not even a single anime body pillow. They ask how the hell did he manage to do all that, and Haru replies that he knows earth magic and some other low magic skills which helped him set it all up. He then asks the nerds what happened to the other classmates, and this seems to silence everyone. The nerd with the glasses looks down before telling Haru that they are on the run right now. Haru is surprised by this and asks what he means. He explains that the day they got transferred into this world, all of them were in shock as they couldn't believe what the hell was happening, but the nerds quickly understood the assignment as they realized that they are in an alternate world and have cheat skills. The bitches were crying and the hoes were feeling bored, but the class rep was trying to calm everyone down. The delinquents noticed that the nerds were not as scared of this sudden change and threatened to beat them up if they didn't tell them everything they knew about this world. But before they could do anything, they get surrounded by a bunch of goblins. All the hoes started crying, and even the delinquents started acting like a bunch of bitches as they scrambled back into the corner. But this was the exact moment every single nerd in the world waits for, and the nerds took charge. They immediately take control of their abilities and used their knowledge about fantasy worlds to easily defeat the goblins. The average Sam Sulek fans decide to help, and together they manage to defeat all the goblins in the area. The class rep quickly took charge once again and led all of them into a clear area near the riverbed where they could actually see any danger approaching them. Soon after that, the nerds helped everyone understand the basic, and they all set up camps while the class rep distributed work between them. Everything would have gone well if the entire class worked as a single unit. But in reality, the hoes were the first who decided that they don't want to set up tents and work, so they left on their own. Realizing that leaving was an option, the delinquents decided to ditch them as well, while the class rep tried to stop all of them but failed miserably. And slowly the entire class got divided into their own groups, and they all went their own ways. This left the class rep along with the nerds and a handful of other students who tried to work together as a team, but because all the others were so incompetent, the nerds were forced to take most of the work, including the battle against the goblins and making sure that their camp didn't get raided. They also wanted to raise their levels as quickly as possible because they wanted to be safe from the two most dangerous skills which can control everyone. Unfortunately, both of the skills were taken by the delinquents who can't be trusted, and the only way to escape that spell is to have high level of magic resistance. The delinquents quickly learned about this as well, and to counteract what the nerds were doing, these useless wastes of oxygen started leveling up as well to make sure that their skills reign supreme so that they can take control of everyone else. The nerds told this plan to the class rep, who decided to train and get leveled up as well. Finally, after a couple of days, the delinquents managed to learn the mind control skills, and to their surprise, they conveniently found the class rep walking nearby. These worthless degenerates immediately try to use their spell on her, but the class rep had other plans and tased the shit out of them, forcing them to the ground. The nerds helped carry them back to the camp where their plans were revealed, and so the delinquents were kicked out of the group. Unfortunately, this was not the happy ending they were expecting, as these zero-ick losers decided to attack their own classmates and started burning down the camps and chasing after the nerds to teach them a lesson. The entire camp was destroyed as no one dared go against the delinquents with the mind control abilities, and this really broke the nerds who worked so hard for the camp. Moreover, the class hoes started showing their honus as they blamed the nerds for everything, as they shouldn't have picked a fight with the delinquents when they couldn't back it up. Slowly, the entire class turned against them, and only the class rep spoke up for them. But because the situation was too awkward, they decided to leave. Haru was amazed after hearing all this and hugged them tightly, claiming that they are actual heroes, and decided to treat them all to a party where they stuffed their faces with shrooms like Mike Tyson on a podcast. The next morning, Haru bid them farewell with a bag full of shrooms, while the nerds asked whether he would want to join their team as he fits the closest with the nerds. They claim that they are heading down to the nearby town to become adventurers, but Haru tells them to fuck off as he is a loner and literally shoos them away like a dog. Haru decides to check up on the rest of his classmates, especially the class rep, but on the way he ends up running into a rabid wolf. The wolf monster fucking bites him in the arm, but Haru manages to bonk him on the head, knocking him out before moving ahead. By the time night falls, he finds the area where his classmates were camped earlier, but he finds only the remains of a camp there. He quickly uses his tracking skills and starts following the footsteps when he suddenly senses the hoes coming right at him, so he tries to hide and move away. Unfortunately, the hoes discover him and shout at him to stop, but he runs like a madman knowing that he shouldn't stick his wood in crazy. but the hoes force him to stop and ask him whether he knows where the nerds are. He asks whether they want to make the nerds run errands for them. But the hoes tell him to shut up as they have realized their mistake and the fact that they were alive just because of the nerds till now. He tells them to let it go as the nerds are long gone by now, and the hoes can only chase after them if they know how to satisfy all the monsters on the way. He tries to make sure that they don't chase after the nerds and die a pointless death. But to his surprise, the hoes start crying for no reason. They start screaming that they simply wanted to apologize, and the captain of the hoes begs Haru to teach them how to survive till they can find the nerds. The hoes promise to give him the Super Ultra Guac Guac 2000 after spitting on his thing if he agreed to teach them, so Haru agrees. The girls follow him like a bunch of puppies lost in the woods and attack anything that Haru kills. He notices that one of them is hurt, so he gives her some of his potion, but the dumb bitch doesn't understand that it's not champagne and simply throws it all over Haru. He is so tired of these dumbasses that he starts wondering when can he get back to his cave and relax when the class rep notices him totally blanking out. The class rep seems happy to find him and calls out his name, but Haru is too preoccupied with his plans to look at her, but she manages to gain his attention by shouting at him. Haru is shocked to see the class rep right beside him and wonders whether he will finally get a chance to score before the delinquents attack them once again. The class rep, however, doesn't seem to like the way he has been walking around with girls this late at night and asks why the hell are these Instagram thoughts following him. Haru tries to run away from these questions, but the other girls following the class rep start giving him the death stare, while the class rep tells him to stay where he is, while she asks the thoughts what he has been doing. Haru doesn't even want to get a handy from these thoughts anyways, and simply wants to return back to his incel ways of living alone. But he is forced to sit, while the other girls discuss what's supposed to be done of their situation. Haru decides to practice some magic while he is at it and starts chanting some of his earth magic spells, which ends up going wrong as he gets stuck beneath the ground. The class rep gets worried about him, but since her pull-out game is strong, she easily frees him from the ground. She finally comes to the conclusion that Haru is actually harmless and he just wanted to help the thoughts out in return for some sloppy tops which can be written off as business expense. She and her girl crew apologizes for shit-talking him, but Haru simply wants to leave and play with his wood in his house. But the moment he mentions a home, the girls get interested, asking whether he was born here. Haru realizes that these girls have the collective ick of a toaster and tells them that he came to the world just like them, but had free time so he made a home for himself. These gold diggers immediately start having a group meeting again when the class rep asks how big is his house. Haru thinks for a moment and replies that he can easily fit in around 240 people, and if he removes some of his furniture and bathhouses, then maybe even more. The girls are shocked to hear about the bath, while the class rep screams at him for living in such luxury while the rest are living like Bear Grylls. Finally, the class rep gathers all her courage and asks him whether they can stay one night over at his place. This really short-circuits his brain as he starts imagining these girls in satin shirts while the class rep shouts at him to stop having scandalous thoughts. They soon start walking through the woods, and somehow this motherfucker is equipped with Google Maps, as well as he simply follows the arrows at night while the other bitches are having trouble seeing what's in front of them. After walking for what seemed like an eternity, they finally reach his house where they all start breathing hard, while he welcomes them to his not-so-humble abode. They immediately start ogling at all the luxurious things that he has in his life, while Haru wonders whether he speed ran through the harem-making process. Things take an amazing turn when these girls finally spot the bathroom and their clothes come off just as fast as I last in the bedroom. The girls immediately jump into the bath together, while Haru stands outside wondering whether the forest life has turned their femininity into savagery. Haru finally decides to call it a night and feels very happy to have his own space outside. But even that is interrupted by the class rep who enters his tent and starts yapping about how the other guys left them all alone in the forest and how hard it was for the strong and independent girls to survive without their Stanley cups and their iced pumpkin spice lattes. But Haru's home provided them some much-needed relief. Haru tells her that she did a great job keeping their spirits high and protecting them throughout this journey, and she shouldn't compare herself to these weebs who have been working all their lives in the hopes of getting transported into an alternate world. The class rep thanks him for his kind words and returns back to the house where they get a good night's sleep while Haru gets some weed and starts imagining the girls while practicing how to create a protein shake. The next morning, he wakes up hoping no one shines a black light in his tent when he spots a purple-haired girl in his tent. He wonders whether this is the part where he finds a stepsis from Alabama, but the girl turns out to be one of his classmates. She tells him to get ready for breakfast as they have cooked some mushrooms and fish, which really shocks him as he ends up knocking her head with his. He runs outside and starts chowing down on the fish like a hungry piranha, while the class rep asks why is he acting like he has never seen a fish before. Haru tells the bitch to shut her trap as he has been going to the river every single day and watching the fishes while eating his shitty mushrooms. The class rep asks why didn't he catch them, but Haru replies that the fishes are slicker than his wood last night, which makes it very hard to catch them. He asks how the hell did they catch these fishes, and the class rep replies that they have experience handling slippery things and also they have magic. One of the girls show him how she uses lightning magic to Pikachu the shit out of the fishes, which excites Haru, who asks her to show it to him one more time. The girl produces the lightning ball once again, but this time he walks up to her and covers the lightning in a plastic cube before throwing it in the water and killing all of the fishes. This really excites him, and he even learns lightning magic this way. The girls are a little confused, but he explains that with his packing magic, he can learn elemental magic. The class rep realizes that it literally sounds like a cheat skill, but Haru replies that the old fuck who calls himself he god gave him very shit abilities, and this is just a loophole he found. Later, while the girls were playing in the water, he asks the class rep about her plans further on. The rep replies that they plan on finding their way to the nearby city and then find work over there. Haru thinks for a moment and claims that right now they are not very strong and independent and will need to raise their levels. The thoughts get mad at this as they are wearing skimpy clothes, which obviously means that they are empowered. But Haru knows that they are nothing more than dumb harlots. The class rep asks whether he can help them raise their level, and Haru immediately agrees and begins their basic training. When he asks about their levels though, he finds out that the lowest level amongst them is 16, which is crazy because he is still level 7. He wonders what he can teach them when they are already much stronger than him, when suddenly the bushes behind them rustle. Haru calls for their attention and reveals that a bunch of wolves have been hiding and waiting for their chance to bite their juicy peaches, and as a test, he asks them to fight. The girls seem overly confident like any empowered woman of this generation, but at the end of the day they turn out to be totally useless and get their ass handed to them in a terrific fashion. After that disgraceful performance, they all enter Haru's tent and start contemplating their future plans as they don't have any skills, so all they can do is either return back to the kitchen or find a sugar daddy. The class thoughts immediately decide that they will easily find a rich man and the rest follow suit. Feeling empowered once again, while the pink-haired girl from the morning apologizes for entering his tent without his permission, as she just wanted to make sure that he was a harmless incel and not like those delinquents. He tells them not to worry and sleeps in his tent, only to wake up to a delicious breakfast with fish once again. While he was eating, he overhears some of the girls returning back to the forest to try and defeat the wolves with their womanly charms, I guess. But thankfully the class rep stops them and tells them that they have to practice. So, the practice begins as they start fighting against lower-level goblins. But these pathetic bitches are so trash that even the garbage truck refused to take them. They all lose one by one. But after some more training, the day for rematch finally arrives. The wolves seem pretty confident about themselves and even start talking smack. He wonders whether this would encourage the girls to fight, but some of these idiots are sleeping, while others are finding excuses to get out of the fight. Thankfully though, not all of them are useless, as the pink-haired girl takes the initiative and soon some of the other girls follow. Even though their execution was spotty, they managed to defeat the poor wolves pretty easily and party afterwards, even inviting one of the wolves to their room tonight for a rave. Haru lays down thinking that his job with these dumb hoes is done, but the class rep soon arrives and asks when are they leaving for the nearby town. This catches him by surprise, as he never planned on going anywhere, but these bitches be crazy and they force him to accompany them to the city. The next morning, he is forced to pack up all his stuff with the pink-haired girl, while the class rep gives everyone a pep talk. She soon turns her attention towards Haru and realizes that he literally wants to pack everything he can in the small bag. She tells him that they can't carry that much stuff by themselves, and finally, after some back and forth, Haru decides to leave most of his things behind and tells the pink-haired girl to stay here and watch over. The class rep is shocked at this and tells Pinky that they are not leaving her behind, and after one final check to make sure they have all the necessary items, they decide to head out for their adventure. Haru looks out into the open wondering about what problems they will have to face during their journey, and tells the class rep that they'll have to stick together no matter what if they want to escape this forest alive. Unbeknownst to them, that night when the rain started coming down, one of their classmates who was left alone runs through the dark forest, stumbling over roots and rocks, running away from a hidden attacker. His marathon ends soon though, as he finally falls to the ground and turns around to face his cloaked attacker, begging him to let him live as he doesn't have the abilities he is looking for. But the cruel attacker doesn't seem to care and starts choking the poor boy without even asking for consent or deciding on a safe word. As expected, the boy soon gets game ended, while the attacker moves through the forest again, looking for his next victim. The next morning they continue their journey through the forest as Haru realizes that he needs to stay with the girls at all times to make sure they are safe from the delinquents who are after them. They decide to try and leave the forest as soon as possible as they were not feeling safe inside. But while walking through an empty plot, they suddenly come face to face against a giant orc wielding a massive club. Haru tells the girls to hide behind the trees as he doesn't want them hurt, and orders them to watch him closely so they can also learn a thing or two about survival in the wild. He gets ready to face off against the orc and starts comparing the difference between their wood. But he knows that size doesn't matter, so he uses the orc's slow movements to his advantage and disappears from the area, leaving the orc confused. He chuckles and stays hidden behind the trees while he remembers that the orcs have very high physical resistance, so hitting it with a stick would be a dumb move. Instead, he needs to use some sort of magic attack against it, which can do much more damage. He quickly opens his stats and starts looking through any magical abilities that he could use, but he realizes that he only has some basic elemental magic, which he uses for cleaning, vacuuming, and dusting the floor. Before he could come to a decision, however, the orc manages to find him and smashes the tree into 2 pieces. The angry fatty starts swinging his club, reminding me of my toxic ex, but unlike me, Haru is good at dodging crazy bitches, so he keeps falling back while trying to figure a way out of this problem. Finally, he takes advantage of the orc's pea-sized brain and with some fancy moves, appears behind the fat idiot, smacking him in the dome with his stick, proving that stamina is better than size. The orc slowly falls to the ground unconscious, while the size queens watch from behind the trees, shocked to see the fatty on the floor. Haru himself is shocked as he never expected the orc to be defeated this easily, since the nerds told him it's resistant against physical damage. The girls seem annoyed since they can't learn anything from this, as he didn't even use magic. He apologizes and promises that the next fat idiot they meet will be killed only using magic. It doesn't really take them long to find their next opponent, as a stupid orc was minding his own business walking towards his skibidi toilet, when Haru decides to rizz up the girls with his unlimited aura and creates a small fireball in his hands. He expected the magic to not be very effective since this is the first time he is using it. But when he shouts Kobe and throws the ball at the orc, the ball explodes in its face, killing the beast with a single headshot. The girls again are shocked, as there is no way they could learn anything from that display of power. Regardless of that, they have a pretty successful day, so by the time night falls, they create a campfire and start doing their natural jobs by creating a kitchen and cooking food. Meanwhile, Haru stays busy creating traps around their campsite and making sure their tents are protected by both monsters and any other enemy. Suddenly, he detects someone coming their way, so he immediately jumps into action and hides behind a tree. He realizes that the intruders are humans and expects the delinquents to come through. But the intruders turn out to be the jocks looking for some creatine in the wild. Haru is relieved to see them as compared to the delinquents. They are much nicer. They seem to be surprised to see Haru in the wild and claim that they were looking for the girls as they wanted to warn everyone about a new dangerous ability that they have just found out about. Haru is immediately interested while the roided-up jock tells him about a secret ability known as hijack, which is even more deadly than the mind control abilities of the delinquents. They claim that they can't trust anyone now, so Haru decides to prank them and pretends to have the hijack skill. The jocks, however, simply laugh it off, claiming that even if he had the hijack ability, it won't matter as he would stay shut in inside his house. Haru takes offense at this and claims that he actually has an ability called servitude, but the jocks claim that it's 2024 now and they don't vibe with the whole slavery thing even in the South. After that, they bid Haru farewell, telling him to be on the watch against the person with this hijacking ability as they walk off into the forest to look for some protein shake. The next morning the girls get ready to get some weapons training, but while they were busy doing makeup, Haru decides to go into the forest to let one out, but the class rep ends up following him. She stops him and asks where he was last night, and Haru honestly replies that he met up with the jocks who warned him about a hijack ability. The class rep immediately looks a little pale as she starts squirming before bowing her head down and apologizing for hiding something important. Haru is not a dumbass, though, as he already guessed that she probably has the hijack ability. The class rep is shocked to see Haru look so calm, as she asks where did he find out about it. Haru replies that he is not as dumb as those creatine-guzzling numbskulls and deduced that much from her behavior. The class rep still looks confused as hijack is a pretty scary ability, as it gives her the power to steal anyone's skill after killing them. Haru tells her not to worry too much about it, as the nerds know what they are doing, as they already are trying to seal the mind control abilities of the delinquents. But even after knowing about her hijack abilities, they didn't bother changing anything, which simply means that they trust her. Haru feels the same as he tells her that he is pretty relieved to know that she has this cheat ability, as he knows she won't use it to hurt anyone. The class rep feels very relieved after hearing this, and she starts smiling at Haru, which really gets his juices flowing as he decides to run into the forest to bust one before starting the day. When he gets back to the camp, he starts selling nut shake cocoa optional for some reason and starts asking for money. One of the thoughts immediately agrees to sell her body instead, and Haru obviously agrees to the deal, but the class rep immediately shuts it off as she is not going to let anyone get pimped out. The thought, however, feels pretty bummed as she really wanted that nut shake, so Haru decides that they should better start walking to get their brains running again. They start making good progress when Haru suddenly spots the river up ahead and tells the class rep that he will be going ahead to scout a bit while she makes sure that the group is safe. The class rep wanted to stop him as he went into the forest this morning as well and came back with suspicious coconut shake. Haru, however, doesn't listen and uses his super speed to launch into the forest and then starts using his magic infusion skill to make his body lighter. This gives him the ability to be more nimble as he jumps onto trees before launching himself up in the sky to get a better view. He quickly realizes that they have covered a lot of ground, but this dumbass forgot that he has no landing gears, so he cartoonishly tries to float in the sky, but obviously fails and comes falling down to the ground, barely surviving with 1 HP. By the time he returns back to the camp, it's already nightfall and the class rep gets pissed to see him all bruised up. He calmly tells her that he fell down from a tree, while she screams at him to stop hitting his head again and again as he already has very low IQ. Usually, Haru doesn't have to deal with bitches and their opinions, so he tries to calm her down with some more suspicious-looking nut-shake cocoa optional. But the class rep refuses and walks away, while the class thought immediately runs up to him, asking for a buckache. Because of his scouting though, they found a much faster way through the forest the next morning, and after some bitch crying, some water sports, they end up running into a bunch of orcs. The bitches turn out to be super adept at running away as they immediately crush poor Haru beneath their shoes to run away. Finally, after dealing with all the issues and traveling through the forests for several days, they manage to get out of the woods and get the first sight of the beautiful city in front of them. Haru suddenly notices that he seems to have unlocked a new skill known as airwalk. He decides to check it out, and to his surprise, with this ability, he manages to easily walk in the air as if he is climbing stairs. The class rep is shocked to see this, but Haru tells her to calm her tits as he checks out the area to make sure there is no danger around. He climbs high up in the sky and uses his supervision to check far and wide when he suddenly finds some NPCs armed and armored, fighting against a bunch of monsters. He returns back to the ground and tells the class rep about it, who immediately claim that they must help those guys. Haru isn't interested in having any competition for the girls, so he refuses, claiming that these guys could very well be bandits. But the class reps pleads with him to help as if they are not bandits. They might die a painful death. Haru realizes that these bitches be crazy, so he tells them to chill out while he goes alone and checks the issue out. The issue still remains that the NPCs are pretty far away. He decides to use his ingenuity as he starts combining different spells with magic infusion, as he makes his body very light, and then uses wind magic for some boost. Together with those spells, he starts using air step and jumps from one step to the other with an incredible speed. His gamble ends up working out as he realizes that now he can travel to faraway places very easily. Unfortunately though, the dumbass class rep ended up getting pulled in by his magic as she struggles to hold his cape. But due to the increased weight and not knowing how to apply brakes, Haru ends up crash landing just near the NPCs. Thanks to his entry, the monsters end up dying, while the class rep is knocked out cold, while the NPCs wonder who the hell these insane idiots are. The NPCs introduce themselves as Gat and Oft, claiming that they were here on a quest to kill these monsters, but they were clearly outmatched, and if not for Haru they would have died. The girls in the party quickly heal each other, while the group starts fixing their carts when Haru offers them some grilled mushrooms. Gat takes it happily, but in a single bite, he realizes that these are not normal shrooms but something known as a buff shroom which can help them regain their strength immediately. Haru hands out the mushrooms to the remaining party members who immediately regain their energy as they wonder why would this stranger offer them such valuable food resources. Haru's mind, however, is stuck at the fact that these old fucks are surrounded by these absolute hotties, which pisses him off as he gets ready to punch them. But thankfully the class rep wakes up and stops him immediately. Soon enough the other bitches arrive at the location as well, and are immediately enchanted by the beautiful elves as they ask for their beauty routine. For helping them survive, the NPCs decide to escort them all the way back to the city, which is a huge accomplishment as the girls happily enter the city, waiting for their next adventure. Haru is pretty happy to see that the girls seem delighted by the new city as they run around the town circle, checking every single shop while Haru wonders whether he should leave, since his job here is done. While Haru chills with his Jack Daniels, the bitches seem to be going crazy as they look at all the buildings that look like cupcakes, which gets their mouth watering. Thankfully, the class rep is there to keep everyone under check while she screams at Haru to help her manage these flocks of bumbling idiots as she can't do all this alone. She sounds her whistle, which immediately brings all the girls to her like a bunch of trained dogs, which surprises Haru as she never expected the class rep to hold this much power. Watching this, he feels more at ease, thinking that the girls are in good hands, but the class rep isn't going to let him off the hook so easily. She starts formulating the plan for the day as she tells them that first they will bring their ass to the Adventurers Guild where they will trade in all the loot that they have collected so far. With the help of the money obtained, they will register themselves with the guild, and after that get a good night's sleep on a comfy bed. Everyone seems to be on the same page till here. But then the class rep mentions that a few days later they will also start asking around for any information on the class nerds. But this makes the class thoughts pretty mad as they want to find the nerds as soon as possible, so that they can apologize for shitting on them for no reason. The class rep apologizes, claiming that she obviously wants to find the nerds as well, while Haru jumps in asking whether the class thoughts want to give the nerds a good sloppy top. A little while later they finally arrive at the Adventurers Guild, but it is much scarier than they ever anticipated. They were expecting a place filled with girls with big plots and happy welcoming faces, but instead they are greeted by a bunch of grown men looking hungrily at them as they wonder who the hell are these newbies. Thankfully Oft emerges from the stairs and calls Haru in, claiming that the guild master wanted to see them. So Haru tells the class rep to wait outside, while he enters the guild all on his own. As soon as he enters inside, all the adventurers start staring at him, while Gat directs him to go inside where he finds an angry-looking guild master who asks whether he is the Haru who fought against the wild beasts. Haru gets scared and wonders if he should simply run away, but he decides to bite the bullet and nods in agreement. Suddenly, the entire atmosphere changes as the guildmaster starts shaking his hands, thanking him for saving the life of this party, as without him Oft's party would have been dead. Haru is pretty shaken up by this meeting, but decides to head downstairs where he finds an open reception. He decides to trade some of the emerald crystals that he harvested along the way. The four-eyed girl at the counter claims that she can appraise the crystals and give him a fair price for it. So Haru decides to try his luck and pours a huge sack of crystals on the table, which totally shocks the girl who wonders who this man is. After that, Haru feels like a total baller, as he claims that he has even more crystals ready. But the girl claims that they don't have the capacity to check so many crystals right now and asks for a day's time. Haru agrees to that and starts walking back to the main room, where he finds out that the girls have already gotten registered at the guild. The adventurers seem very surprised as almost all of the girls are already level 30, which they were not expecting at all. But Haru knows that he has trained the girls enough that they can't even defeat a level 40 adventurer easily. Finally, one of the class thoughts pushes Haru inside to get registered as well. And even though he didn't have any plans on working as an adventurer, but he still decides to try his luck as this is the time where he can impress all the girls and kiss his incel life goodbye. He proudly enters the room where a blonde girl checks his stats, but calls him a loser, claiming that you need to be at least level 10 and also be in a party to even register at the guild. This totally breaks poor Haru, who falls to the ground as he starts begging for a second chance. But the girl tells him to grow up and start looks-maxing, as that is the only way he can ever get into a party with his ugly face. She tells him that he can only start adventuring solo once he reaches level 20, and he won't even be called a proper adventurer till he reaches level 30. He realizes that there is no way he can get a party because of his loner skill, and he can't even go solo as he is not even close to level 20. This totally breaks him as he wonders whether he will always stay a loser. The class rep feels really bad for Haru, so she cheers him up, and they all soon make their way towards the hotel to spend the night. After a long time, they finally get to sleep on proper beds, which is all they wanted. But Haru still stays awake in his own bed, as he felt much more comfortable sleeping in the forest. The next morning everyone goes outside to explore the town since it is pretty safe. And even Haru decides that he should just get the money from the emeralds and head back to the forest, as the girls should be safe now. But unfortunately, the girl at the reception alongside her superiors all apologize to Haru since they don't even have enough money right now to pay for all his emeralds. The guildmaster walks out, claiming that he brought so many emerald crystals that they didn't even have enough manpower to count it properly, let alone pay for it. So he asks Haru whether he would like to get paid in installments. That is totally fine by Haru, as he loves capitalism and receives a hefty bag of $5,000, which totally shocks him. He seems pretty satisfied by what he has earned, but obviously the moment a loser gets money, all the girls start becoming leeches as they all celebrate and get ready to shop as if it was their money. Gat, on the other hand, is a true brother who tells Haru that he should ditch these hoes and get some actual ones, as he knows a place. Immediately Haru's mouth starts watering since he has been practicing for No Nut November and edging for 23 days over his skibidi toilet. The class rep tries to stop him, but he ignores her and starts walking with Gat while dreaming about all the girls he will find. But he is disappointed yet again to see an old worn-down shop at the side of the road. Haru looks pretty disappointed, but Gat promises that this shop sells only the best items found in the dungeons. Haru soon starts looking through all the items on sale and realizes that Gat wasn't lying, as these items are definitely pretty unique and interesting. This sends him on a shopping spree as he starts trying on different weapons, armors, and magical items while he puts them all in his cart when, after shopping for an entire day, his eye falls on a special necklace. He asks the weird guy what this necklace does, and he replies that it can fuse multiple items into one. Haru thinks that it could be pretty useful when the class rep arrives at the spot, telling him to chill out with his shopping and head back to sleep. Unfortunately, Haru ends up slipping and accidentally fuses all of the items together. The weird guy/girl is horrified at this as she cries, claiming that he can't fuse before purchasing as all those items are worth over $60,000. This shocks Haru as he goes into depression, while Gat tries to negotiate the price a bit, while the class rep apologizes, claiming they only have $50,000. A couple of days pass by after that, and Haru is still depressed as he is broke now, and there are still so many things he wanted to buy. He doesn't even go out to hunt for more crystals, as he can't go on quests before turning level 20, and he can't even try to merge with the girls, as the class rep will catch him and put him back in his towers. After thinking for a while, he decides that now is the time to leave the city life behind, so he grabs Harry Potter's invisibility cloak and walks right past all the girls in the area. After leaving the tower, for some reason this giant dumbfuck removes the cloak and starts running like a crackhead across the streets and decides to parkour his way out of the city walls. But he is not as cool as he thinks he is and breaks his nuts on top of the walls, while the sports girls from his class watch him slowly slither down the wall in pain with the knowledge that he will never become a father. His plan fails spectacularly and he is sent back to the tower, and the next day the class rep tells him to stay back and be a nice boy as a punishment for trying to run away. Haru pretends to agree with her orders and promises to stay put. But the moment they are off, he quickly gets his cloak and simply walks through the city once again. But this time he keeps his cloak on. He simply walks past the giant dim sum-looking mother at the gate and soon exits the city walls and starts running towards the forests. On the way he spots a destroyed village and a bunch of goblins nearby, which he ignores since he is no hero, and keeps making his way towards the jungle. On the way he also spots a carriage being robbed by a bunch of men, and he stops for a moment wondering whether he should help, but realizes that these things probably happen every day in this world and tries to ignore it. Before he could run away though, one of the robbers throws a spear at him, which he dodges while the others get ready to attack. He tells them that he just wants to be alone. But they start making fun of the way he speaks, which brings back some old memories, and in his anger, he literally starts roasting them. The robbers soon decide to fight back and start using their special abilities to attack him, which could have been dangerous. But these idiots were just bots who could only spam a single spell and soon tire themselves out. Soon enough, a bratty girl walks out the carriage and introduces herself as Mary the noble girl and thanks him for saving her from the bandits and begs him to accompany her for the rest of the way as she is scared that more bandits might attack her. In return, she offers him a guac 2000, and even though Haru wanted to return back to the forest, he can't skip on an offer like that and agrees to escort her through the dangerous forest, wondering what monsters are waiting for him along the way. Soon, they reach the city, and Haru doesn't get what Mary promised him. He becomes impatient and thinks that he should have not accepted her request as he paces up and down the waiting room in her castle. He decides to go back to the forest immediately, but Mary comes down after changing into some fresh clothes and acts upset that Haru is trying to leave even though she is planning to treat him very well. He has no choice but to go along with her, and to his surprise, her way of saying thanks is better than he expected. She treats him to a full-course dinner that would make vegans choke and die. He begins deep-throating the meat like a savage, and Mary is irritated by his lack of manners. Anyway, she rewards him with a pouch of money and a VIP identity card that can allow him to enter and exit the city as he pleases. However, much to her irritation, Haru doesn't pay her any attention cause he is busy gulping down the food. The next day, he gets surrounded by the class rep and other girls who want to know where did he spend the last night. Haru tells them that he got invited to the house of this town's mayor, and assures them that it was not because he was trying to escape to the forest. The girls believe him and then leave for the forest themselves to level up and get some resources. Once they are gone, Haru gets ready to leave the city as well, and this time, he is confident that the identity card is going to get him through everything. Before leaving, he buys some stuff from the weird guy's shop and some food for his comfortable loner life in the forest. He also writes a note for the class rep so that she doesn't get angry, saying that he is going to look out for the jocks since he is worried about them. Since it is not completely false, Haru thinks that this would be enough to keep the class rep from looking for him. With that, he heads to the gate and shows the big dim sum his identity card to get out of the city legally. He feels at home in the forest with the wild creatures and monsters living freely. He misses his home and thinks that he can finally become a loner like he was born to. Again, just then, an orc attacks him from behind, but Haru easily knocks it out with his staff. However, he finds it odd because orcs are not supposed to be found in the outer parts of the forest. He thinks that something fishy is going on here and walks deeper into the forest, where he finds a huge blood stain on the ground. Haru panics a bit, wondering if this blood belongs to the nerds, which is unlikely because they are masters when it comes to things in another world. He thinks that it is most likely the blood of the jocks or the delinquents, and decides to follow the huge trail of blood. He finds the jocks severely injured and his heart breaks, thinking that they may have picked a fight with the delinquents and ended up dead. However, he sees one of them is still breathing, and he immediately throws all the healing potions he made from the mushrooms on them. He wishes that they can recover because Sam Sulek would, and his wishes are answered as the leader of the jocks opens his eyes. Haru leads them all to his cave, where they tell him what actually happened. They tried confronting the delinquents to protect the girls, but then suddenly, Tanaka, who was supposed to be their pet nerd, backstabbed them. He killed all the delinquents and even stole the op weapons that they received on coming to this world, and they had no choice but to run away from him. However, he caught them, and they were no match for him. The jocks say that Tanaka was terrifyingly strong, and he was looking for the class rep with an unshakable determination. Even the muscleheads are smart enough to realize that Tanaka is looking for the hijack skill that has to be with the class rep. Haru is shocked that the jocks can actually think, and they tell him that Tanaka lost track of class rep, so he beat them to an inch of their life, believing that they would go to her for help. However, the jocks were ready to sacrifice themselves and instead, they crawled towards Haru's cave so that he would be lured there, and Haru would be able to do something about the situation. They ask for his help to defeat Tanaka, and while he didn't want to get involved with others initially, he can't back out of this fight. He tells the jocks that he will deal with Tanaka, but he is going to fight alone. Everyone is shocked, but the jock leader trusts that Haru has a plan. Haru tells them to hurry to the town and keep the girls safe, while he deals with the situation here. He knows that having the jocks on his side would boost his chances at victory, but if all of them were to die in the battle, the girls would be left defenseless. That is why he thinks that fighting Tanaka is his cross to bear, and he plans to get stronger quickly. He starts forming a strategy to counter the powerful weapons that Tanaka has taken from the jocks. As he has seen while fighting the bandits, weapon skills are strong, but there is no way to stop them once they start. That is why he decides to come up with a new skill that has no weakness. Just then he spots some goblins sniffing the blood trail and decides to use them as experience points. He quickly takes down the high-level goblins, but they die in one hit and don't give him anything much. Haru wishes to fight a stronger enemy, and then suddenly he senses a powerful monster nearby. He turns around to find a goblin king who charges at him without a warning. Haru can only dodge the goblin king's ruthless attacks and realizes that he is using some kind of weapon skill. He knows that one hit and he would be sent to see his maker, but he decides to defeat the monster and become stronger. He combines the various skills he has and strengthens his staff to take down the goblin king with just one hit. He is pleased with his strategy and growth when suddenly an even stronger monster appears behind him. It is a level 50 goblin emperor, and Haru realizes that he can't do anything against it if he fights it head-on. So he does exactly that and charges at the goblin emperor with the new gambit skill he has developed. He manages to hit the goblin emperor, but his attack did almost no damage. The monster gets back up and then walks like Jackie Chan in Drunken Master, before suddenly attacking Haru, just grazing his face. Haru keeps dodging the flurry of the Goblin Emperor's attack and then lands a counterattack as he sees an opening. He managed to bring down the monster's health bar down considerably, but it uses a healing skill to restore its health and even increases its strength. The monster then sends a flying slash at Haru, sending him crashing into the trees behind him. He is tired and tattered by now, but he gaslights himself into thinking that he is just being a wimp because the jocks survived even worse injuries than him, so he should be fine at this level. He gets back on his feet and attacks the Goblin Emperor, and after fighting all night long, Haru finally manages to defeat it and reaches level 11. He lets out a victory roar to celebrate and then heads back to his house in the forest. He checks out his stats after leveling up and finds out more about how to use his skills. The gambit attack that he created earlier has been registered as a skill now, and Haru is confident that it has no weakness which will come handy in his fight against Tanaka. Later that evening, as Haru is standing outside his cave, Tanaka comes to face off against him. He is disappointed because he had hoped for the jocks to lead him to the class rep, but instead they brought him to the loner of the class. He says that it is a shame that he couldn't find the class rep even after everything he did, including manipulating the dumb delinquents and dividing the class into separate groups. Haru is furious and asks what did he do to the other boys, and Tanaka says that he killed them a long time ago. He doesn't even consider Haru to be a threat and tells him to chill out with his useless skills in the forest. Haru points his staff at him, and Tanaka tells him to get his dirty and smelly stick away from his face. That's what she said. Haru tells him that even though he is a loner, he will protect the class rep, and Tanaka grins menacingly as he says that he will kill him first in that case. Tanaka unleashes his full power and sends some rocks flying at Haru as a warning. He then says that back in the White Room, when everyone was selecting skills, he went last and made sure that all the leftover skills were trash. He smirks, asking Haru if he can defeat him with those worthless skills, and then sends some bigger rocks at him. Haru gets ready to defend against them, but then Tanaka uses his unique ability called Tweak. As a result, Haru's body starts tweaking, and he finds it hard to move. Despite that, he dodges the rocks somehow, and then Tanaka summons crystal spikes right under his feet. Haru evades them too, but he is exhausted now because his body is feeling much heavier. Tanaka admits that he is better than he thought, and then asks him how long has he been suspecting him. Haru replies that he doubted him from the very first moment. He knew that Tanaka would either go with the nerds or become a loner, but he was shocked to see him with the delinquents, and thought that there must be some reason behind it. After that, Haru asks him when did he start acting on this plan. Tanaka reveals that he thought of it as soon as they were teleported from the classroom. He missed out on the hijack skill, but then he saw the tweak skill that can manipulate the targets slightly, so he chose it. He manipulated the stupid delinquents, and the rest is history. Tanaka says that they have talked enough, and ties Haru's foot with a vine. He then shoots a powerful fire spell at him, thinking that this will be enough to kill him. But to his surprise, Haru absorbs the flames into his staff thanks to the power of the herb that fused with it. He immediately goes on the counter to strike Tanaka down while he is still in shock, but it turns out that Tanaka was just acting. He pulls out a sword from his ass to block Haru's attack and then pushes him back. Next, he summons all the weapons in his arsenal, saying that he will finally get to try them all. He charges at Haru with a sword and quickly changes his weapons with each strike. Haru is completely on the back foot, and he can barely defend against Tanaka's unpredictable and swift attacks. He tries to hide in the bushes but gets hit with a powerful attack that sends him flying to the other side of the river. Haru realizes that he is not strong enough to face Tanaka, and then wonders how can he use so many weapons and powers at once. Tanaka comes there and asks him to give up, but Haru gets up and asks if he is using the copycat skill to copy the abilities of their classmates. Tanaka affirms and adds that he was planning to use this to copy class rep's hijack ability and then kill her to get his hands on the real deal. After that, it won't take him long to kill everyone and steal their abilities as well. Haru realizes that he is against his toughest enemy yet, and Tanaka starts attacking him with different weapons. Haru tries to fight back, but only hits an illusion, and the real Tanaka is behind him. He thinks that this tactic won't work, so he points his staff to the ground, and Tanaka thinks that he gave up. He charges at him, but Haru dodges his attack by aping Goku's Ultra Instinct, and then asks Tanaka if he can use one copied skill only 3 times. That hits a nerve and Tanaka begins to panic. He loses control of the situation, and Haru says that he figured out the weakness of his copycat skill a long time ago, and made him waste his copied abilities on purpose. Tanaka is furious that he got played, but Haru knows that he is still holding at least one copy of each skill. Tanaka attacks him in desperation, but Haru dodges his attack and then knocks him back with a kick. He decides to finish him quickly using this opening, but then Tanaka suddenly fires a powerful shot at him, causing him to stop. He is determined not to lose, so he decides to use his ultimate weapon. Tanaka summons a dagger and moves towards Haru rapidly, dealing him 2 quick strikes before vanishing and appearing above him. Haru dodges everything, but as dust fills the air, he realizes that this was just a decoy, and Tanaka has something else up his sleeve. He is right, because Tanaka is hiding behind a rock, charging up his ultimate ability called Instant Death. He hits Haru with that, and true to its name, the skill ends his life instantly. He falls to the ground, and Tanaka comes out to laugh like an evil genius. He stomps on Haru's head and decides to go on his way, but then suddenly, Haru gets back up and asks why is he leaving so soon. Tanaka freaks out and asks how the hell can be alive after getting hit by instant death, and Haru reveals that he has the general health skill, which makes him resistant to status effects, and instant death is one of them. He also has his luck stat maxed out, which means that the success rate of instant death was greatly reduced. Tanaka loses his mind and asks why did he collapse then, and Haru says that it was an act. Tanaka still can't believe it and says that it should be impossible for him to move so swiftly when he was under his tweak skill, and Haru reveals another secret. He used another skill called Blockhead that allows him to control others like a puppet, and he used it on himself to counter Tweak's effect. Tanaka can't control himself anymore, and he immediately begins spamming his weapon skills at Haru, who easily blocks them. The nerd falls to his knees, unable to believe that his perfect calculations failed. He recalls how he was always bored at school because he was a genius ahead of everyone. He wished for a way to cure his boredom, and then he was teleported into this world with the rest of his classmates. The moment he saw the skill list, Tanaka knew the choices he should make to make his life most thrilling. He was more than willing to kill his classmates for that, and thought that once he got all the abilities, he would be perfect and unbeatable. He can't believe that he lost to someone with useless skills, and in the madness, he charges at Haru recklessly. Haru easily disarms him, and thinking that Tanaka has ran all out of tricks, he goes ahead to finish him. However, his sword returns back and pierces Haru, who realizes that Tanaka was still hiding his remote control abilities. Tanaka declares that he still won in the end as he begins slashing Haru, but then Haru punches him away. He managed to block the damage with his packing skill, and then decides to end the battle by using the gambit skill to deal a blow that Tanaka cannot dodge. Tanaka loses his consciousness and falls to the ground, and Haru walks away, saying that even though he doesn't have any op abilities, he has his tricks. However, he is also completely worn out now, and the damage has finally started showing its effect on his body. He doesn't have the strength to keep moving, and he falls to his knees, thinking that this is the end. He thinks about the class rep and his friends just as he is about to lose consciousness, but then someone supports him. Haru opens his eyes and sees the nerds there. He is disappointed that they came too late, but they tell him to complain later. They feed him some healing potions and support him as they walk back to the town. Haru asks them what are they doing in the forest, and they reveal that when they were returning from a hunting trip, they saw their classmates and learned from the jocks that he was trying to fight Tanaka. So they immediately rushed to help him, but they were a bit late. Soon, they reach the city and everyone is waiting for them at the gates. The girls surround Haru as they offer themselves as his reward, but he nervously walks away from them and high-fives the leader of the jocks. The girls drag him inside, and the vain TikTok bitch apologize to the nerds for their past actions. Haru thinks that this is the happy ending everyone wanted, and now he has no role here. He decides to sneak out while everyone is busy, but class rep stops him and asks where the hell is he going. He freaks out, and then she suddenly hugs him, saying that she was really worried about him. Haru apologizes, but the class rep tells him that an apology won't be enough. She has gathered all the girls in the class who are going to scold him for sneaking out of the city without telling them. Haru freaks out, but he has no choice as the girls drag him back into the city to scold him and then suck his soul out. Later that night, Haru has a dream about someone chained deep inside a dungeon, waiting for a person to come there. The chained person appears like a girl one moment, and then like a skeleton the next second. Haru instantly wakes up as the dream ends, and wonders if it could be hinting to something. The next day, as he wakes up and goes to the tavern, he finds the gang of nerds there, who are ready to venture into the dungeon to hunt some monsters. They tell Haru that they are looking for a rare item that increases their Riz points and changes how other people see them. Haru says that it is perfect for nerds like them whom no one likes, and they reply that they could say the same about him. After they leave, Haru thinks that since his work here is done, he should really get back to his cozy cave in the forest, but the class rep is right behind him. She is furious that he is trying to escape again, and is ready to go Super Saiyan on his ass. Haru asks her to have mercy on him because he got lectured for a gazillion hours the last night, but class rep tells him that it was the collective lecture from all the girls, and her personal scolding is not yet finished. Haru begins sweating and falls to his knees as he promises not to do anything dangerous again, and class rep finally leaves him alone. He is still rattled, but then thinks about the item the nerds were talking about. He thinks that if he can use it to raise his affinity with the class rep and others, he won't ever get scolded, and then he can return to his loner life in peace. So he decides to hit the dungeon too, but on the way, he suddenly encounters a bunch of pig monsters who are ready to hunt some humans. However, Haru thinks that they are just the right amount of warm-up for him. Back in the city, class rep is receiving a monster subjugation mission from the guild master, when suddenly, the noble girl Mary comes running there and tells them about a massive monster outbreak. She says that a huge horde of orcs is approaching their city, and it has already destroyed a couple villages in its way. The adventurers immediately get ready to fight the orcs, and class rep also offers to help in the fight. She runs back to the inn to rally everyone, but then wonders where Haru went. Right now, he is charging towards the orcs while analyzing the situation. He quickly takes down the smaller orcs and then moves on to their boss. He attacks the orc king with his staff, but it doesn't do much damage. Haru spams the orc king with powerful attacks till it is knocked out cold, and then resumes walking to the dungeon. He soon finds the dungeon and uses his stealth skill to enter it without alerting the guard outside. The weeb inside him is really pumped up about exploring the dungeon, and he quickly finds a treasure box. However, it has only junk in it, much to his disappointment. Haru tries other treasure boxes as well, but all of them are more useless than my college degree. He begins to think that he should have asked an expert before coming to the dungeon. That immediately reminds him of the weirdo who sells special items found in the dungeon, and he decides to talk to him about it. Haru runs back to the city, where the adventurers and the girls are standing firm, waiting for the orc attack. They have been waiting since midday, and now they wonder if the orcs are really coming or not. Suddenly, they spot someone coming through the dust cloud, but it is just Haru. Class rep is shocked to see him, and she immediately runs to him. He asks why is everyone at the gate, and why have they a lit bonfire. Class rep tells him that a nearby village was attacked by monsters, and now this town is in danger too. She says that while they were here trying to protect the town, he was goofing off somewhere without being aware of the danger. Haru gets nervous as he thinks that another night of scolding awaits him, when suddenly, he hears one guy talk about the orcs. He nervously reveals that he might have wiped out the entire horde of orcs on his way, and this news leaves everyone dumbfounded. While everyone is impressed by his strength, his classmates are furious because he did a dangerous thing right after he promised them that he would not do it again. Later, they return to the guild where Mary and the guild master thank Haru, but class rep is still bitching and moaning about him doing dangerous things. The weak bitches tell Haru that they are lecturing him for his own good, because monsters have been growing stronger and more violently lately, which is an early sign of a monster stampede. This time, even the guild master and Mary ask him not to do anything dangerous, and he promises them, just like politicians promise things out of their ass every 4 years. The next day, Haru visits the weird shopkeeper, who freaks out on seeing him and says that he doesn't have anything to sell today. However, Haru tells him that he is not here for items, but for information on an item that can increase one's affinity. Voldemort's cousin tells him about the pheromone rings, which gets Haru's blood racing to his crotch, and he asks him where can he find it. Voldemort Light says that the rings will probably be in an area of the dungeon that has not been explored yet, and those places can only be found from the 50th floor. Haru is excited, but the weirdo warns him that each floor has a boss monster that needs to be defeated to reach the next one. The weirdo is just trying to sell him some potions by scaring him, but Haru says he will order some from Temu. However, the nerd gang hears this, and they immediately tell the girls about his plans. They are more determined than ever to stop Haru from risking his life and using a risky item. They angrily follow him and confront him about the pheromone ring. Haru cooks up a story about looking for the Solomon ring that turns one into a Disney princess and lets them talk with animals, but no one is buying it. So he just runs to the dungeon, and the guard does nothing but tell him not to go inside. The rest of his classmates follow him, and class rep tells him to stop running or he will get caught by a trap. Haru is confident in his maxed out luck stat, but then suddenly, he touches a wall that crumbles and he falls right through the hole. He keeps falling for a very long time, and uses earth magic to turn the ground bouncy like he had Luffy's Gear 5. Thanks to that, he doesn't get hurt from the landing, and then begins looking around to figure where he is at. In his struggle to explore the dark region, he suddenly learns the spatial awareness skill along with trap detection. He immediately uses both the skills to scan the area, and finds that he is on the 101st floor, when the dungeon is said to only be 100 floors deep. He is terrified that he may face an extreme strong boss monster here, but still walks through the hallways full of dark mana. He reaches a room at the end of the hall, and when he opens the door, a strong gust of wind caused by an overwhelming mana almost blows him away. Haru wonders who could have such a strong mana, when suddenly, he sees the chained skeleton he saw in his dreams last night. He keeps walking towards the skeleton monster, and finds that it is the Dungeon Emperor who rules the entire place. It is a level 100 monster, and Haru begins to shit bricks as he realizes what he is up against. He uses his appraisal skill on the Dungeon Emperor, but all of its stats and skills are hidden. Whatever is revealed is enough to terrify him to the core, because the Emperor belongs to multiple races of monsters like Lick and Dullahan. Haru thinks that he can't beat the Dungeon Emperor in long-range combat, so he decides to quickly move near it and deliver a surprise blow. However, the boss monster easily blocks the attack, and Haru decides to use its overwhelming speed against it by using his gambit skill. However, the boss blocks that easily as well, and now Haru begins sweating as he realizes that this fight will be his hardest one. Despite that, he is determined to find a way to find a weakness of the Dungeon Emperor and defeat it. To counter the super speed of the Dungeon Emperor, Haru decides to use all his magic power to increase his speed. He rushes towards the Dungeon Emperor and strikes it, but it easily blocks the attack. Haru decides to go even faster, but no matter how hard he tries, he is unable to break through the Dungeon Emperor's defenses and land a hit. Suddenly, he sees a vision of him getting stabbed in the heart and moves out of the Dungeon Emperor's way as it thrusts its blade towards him. Haru thanks his divine sight skill that manifested into his contact lens after he observed the crazy fast movements of the boss monster. This new skill allows him to peek a little into the future, but he knows that if he lets his guard down for even a moment, he will be dead meat. To prevent his thoughts from distracting him, he charges at the Dungeon Emperor and keeps swinging his weapon without rest. The adrenaline from fighting a battle where his life is at stake begins to overtake his mind, and he feels thrilled. However, he quickly reaches his limits, and as he swings his staff, he falls to the ground. He is sweating profusely and breathing heavily because he has burnt through his mana and stamina, but his enemy is still the same. He tries getting up as the Dungeon Emperor walks towards him, but there isn't enough strength in his legs. Luckily, the Dungeon Emperor just waits for him to recover his strength. Haru wonders why is he not attacking, but then suddenly realizes that the Dungeon Emperor hasn't shown even a bit of murderous intent during their entire fight. He realizes that the boss monster knows that it can kill any intruders without any difficulty, and that is why it isn't showing hostility towards him. Haru gets up and tells the Dungeon Emperor to stop underestimating him. He charges ahead and attacks the Emperor, who swings his sword half-heartedly, giving Haru the chance to slip behind. Haru tries using this chance to deal a hit, but the Dungeon Emperor was ready for that too, and it casually points his sword at his throat to show that he can't defeat it. At first, Haru is pissed that the Dungeon Emperor is not taking him seriously, but then he begins to doubt it. He sees the dark, menacing aura around the skeleton monster and wonders if it is being controlled by the aura. Haru now understands that the Dungeon Emperor is being made to fight against its will, when suddenly he sees his staff glowing and absorbing the dark aura. He doesn't understand how did his staff get the power to counter a dark curse like this, but he decides to use it and draw out all the dark aura. He attacks the Dungeon Emperor and begins sucking the dark aura into his staff, and then using the right chance, he strikes the aura above the Dungeon Emperor, completely nullifying it. Just as Haru does that, the Dungeon Emperor lays down its sword, and he understands that it never wanted to fight him. Instead, it wanted to be free of the dark aura's control and be put to eternal rest. Haru approaches the skeleton warrior, asking it if it wants to die peacefully. Suddenly, it drops its sword and the darkness begins returning to its body. Haru thinks that he must kill the Dungeon Emperor before it suffers at the hands of the darkness again, and raises his staff, but he is unable to strike it. Instead, he hugs the Dungeon Emperor, thinking that it is also a loner like him. To his surprise, his gesture touches the soul of the Dungeon Emperor and activates the servitude skill, turning it into his servant. Haru freaks out on seeing this, but at least he doesn't have to deal with the dungeon darkness anymore. He asks the Dungeon Emperor if it hates being a servant to him, and it shakes its head to show that it does not. Haru realizes that the skeleton warrior understands him, and it isn't hostile. He decides to use his appraisal skill on it once again to see if anything changed, and he finds that its level and species has been reset. On top of that, he can see the real name of the skeleton warrior. Turns out that she was a girl named Angelica before turning into a skeleton, and Haru freaks out thinking that class rep is going to scold him for using servitude on a girl again. He then thinks that since this one is a skeleton, it should be fine. He decides to head back to the city with his new servant and finds a door that leads them to the 100th floor of the dungeon. Haru sees some stairs and thinks that they can easily climb up now, but then suddenly, the floor master appears before him. It is a level 100 living armor, and Haru loses hope because he is not in the condition to fight anymore. The skeleton warrior Angelica was trying not to kill him, but the living armor doesn't seem to be in the mood for showing mercy. Haru suddenly gets an idea that doesn't involve using stairs, and he uses earth magic to create a hole in the roof to climb up to the next floor. However, there are two angry level 99 minotaurs staring at him there, and they jump down to join the fight. Well, Haru has got the devil's luck, and the minotaurs jump right on top of the living armor, defeating it and taking enough fall damage that reduces their HP to just 1 point. He finishes them off with just one hit, and then Angelica points towards the armor, hinting that she wants it. Haru tells her to go for it, and she wears the armor that is too big for her. However, it magically readjusts to her size and even gets her 3 measurements right, much to Haru's delight. He decides to appraise her armor and finds that it is cursed, but that upsets Angelica because like any other girl, she was expecting a compliment. She begins to march upstairs angrily, and Haru just follows her. Back at Haru's location, he has found the way to improve Angelica's mood is giving her his old robes so that she can look more fashionable. As she is fawning over herself, Haru's spider sense tingles, and he senses danger nearby. Suddenly, a level 98 lick comes there, and on appraising it, Haru finds that only divine magic works on it. The lick attacks him, and he barely dodges it before recalling that his staff had some sort of divine spell in it. He activates the divine power of his staff and pokes the lick with it, easily defeating it. On the next floor, Haru finds a bunch of poisonous moths, but he knows their very obvious weakness. He sends a fireball in the middle of the group of moths, and they are all attracted towards it. He then pours more mana into the fireball to make it bigger, wiping out all the moths at once. On the next floor, he finds the caterpillars that will turn into the moths one day, and luckily, they also have the weapon of their own demise in the form of sticky threads. Haru uses the thread and earth magic to create an earthen carpet and rolls it over the caterpillars, killing them all without any effort. However, his smooth winning streak is interrupted on the 95th floor as he feels an ominous aura all around him. Strong winds start blowing as he approaches near the boss, which is a level 100 living sword. Haru thinks it is cheating for the boss to be at a higher level than the floor, and it doesn't look it will be as easy to defeat as the previous bosses. The sword attacks them, and Haru quickly moves behind to its exposed back to defeat it. However, the sword dodges and launches a counterattack that shocks Haru. He somehow dodges it, and then one of the smaller swords also attacks him. He realizes that he can't keep up with this type of enemy, but he knows who can. So he tags Angelica and tells her to deal with the sword monsters because that is her field. Angelica releases her powerful aura as she draws her sword, and the living sword also unleashes its full power in response. Angelica charges straight at it, and Haru panics, thinking this is not the best strategy. To his surprise, Angelica easily overpowers the living sword and destroys it in one hit. Haru realizes that he was lucky that Angelica didn't want to kill him when they fought, but right now, she is his strongest ally. On the other hand, Haru's classmates have reached the 50th floor while looking for him, where they fight a terrifying 4-armed cyclops. They can't hold out against the giant monster, and are on the verge of being wiped out. The leader of the jocks and the leader of the nerds begin to wonder what would Haru do in such a situation, and they suddenly come to an understanding about what they should do. They go to support the class rep who is having a hard time on the front lines, and tell her about their plan. The plan is risky, but the head jock gets class rep to agree to it. He uses his hyper-acceleration skill to overwhelm the Cyclops with his speed while the girls distract it with magic attacks. The Cyclops bitch slaps him before he can do anything, but that was a part of their plan. The head jock was just a decoy who had to distract the Cyclops while the head nerd charged up his bow. He shoots his most powerful attack and blows up the Cyclops' eye, defeating it, and the entire class rejoices. Meanwhile, as Haru and Angelica are climbing up the floors, the dungeon suddenly starts rattling as a huge horde of monsters gets on the move. Back at the entrance of the dungeon, the guard is whining and bitching about how no one respects him, and the students went into the dungeon despite him warning them about a monster stampede. Suddenly, all the rats in the dungeon run outside, and when the guard turns around, he is shocked to see menacing slime monsters coming towards him. He freaks out and runs to the Adventurers Guild and informs the guild master that the stampede has begun. The noble girl Mary is also there along with some experienced adventurers, and they are all worried about the stampede. The guild master pulls out an old scroll from his bookshelf that shows a layout of the dungeon. He explains that dungeons are kind of like living beings, and they grow by expanding downwards into the ground. Once they reach their final floor, their growth spots and a huge number of monsters are spawned, who rush outside because the dungeon can no longer contain them. The scroll also says that the only way to stop a stampede is to kill the dungeon boss on the lowest floor, because defeating the boss will make all the monsters disappear. The adventurers ask who can even do that, and Mary immediately thinks of Haru. Suddenly, the earth rattles as the monsters begin attacking the city. The guild master sends one adventurer to evacuate the citizens, and the other one to rally all the adventurers and soldiers at the city gate so that they can defend it. Inside the dungeon, Haru is still climbing up without any difficulty. He finds a bunch of griffins in one floor, and he throws them some poisoned fish. The griffins eat them up immediately and soon fall unconscious on the floor. Haru just hits them and turns them into XP, and then heads upstairs. Back at the city gates, the adventurers have fended off the first wave of the stampede, but many of them have sustained serious injuries. Mary is worried now, and suddenly, one of the adventurers remembers that the students went into the dungeon earlier today, and Haru was with them. The guild master thinks about it, and says that Haru is probably the only one who can kill the dungeon boss and end the stampede. He wants to deliver this message to him, and everyone wonders who will do it. They stare at Mary because she is the only one who is not contributing anything to the fight, so she might as well be a messenger. She gets terrified and teary-eyed on hearing this, and says that she can't go to a place swarming with monsters by herself. The guild master understands her concerns and sends the guy named Ofter to escort her. Ofter says that if he goes to the dungeon, they will have one less capable warrior here, but the guild master says that he is Whitebeard's illegitimate son, and he swears on his mustache that he will hold back any monsters that come here. Meanwhile, in the dungeon, Haru comes to the 81st floor, which has a water-based theme and piranha-like monsters. As he wonders what should he do and takes a peek at the water, some piranhas attack him. Luckily, Angelica protects him by slashing the fishes. Haru recalls seeing these fish in the market, but they were frozen, so he uses ice magic to lower the temperature of the water, slowing down the fishes. He then uses the packing skill to freeze them in ice, and it is a success. He thinks that they will easily clear this floor now and runs over the stepping stones, freezing any fish near him. Suddenly, a huge piranha pops out of the water, and Haru realizes that it is the boss of this floor. It seems angry at him because he froze her family and attacks him with a huge wave. Angelica ditches Haru at the last moment, and he gets swept underwater. However, he makes a surfboard with earth magic and propels himself up instantly. He rides the wave and then jumps towards the giant piranha's head, knocking it out with one solid hit. After confirming that the boss monster is defeated, Haru gets to safety and happily resumes his journey to the top of the dungeon. He feels even more confident in his abilities now and quickly climbs up. On the 79th floor, he finds the pilgrim's ring that brings happiness and protects against bad luck. On the 77th floor, he finds the blessed bangle that can dispel a curse, but only once. On the 75th floor, he defeats the floor boss and gets the necromancy ball that can control the living and the dead. Haru is thrilled to find all this treasure, but then realizes that he is neither cursed nor unlucky. He suddenly turns around and offers the ring and the bangle to Angelica, saying that she can break free from her curse and find happiness using them. He even adds the necromancy ball as a bonus. Angelica tries to refuse, but Haru pushes the items on her, saying that girls like accessories, so she should accept them. In the end, Angelica takes the 3 treasure items, and their powers suddenly start working on her. Haru doesn't notice that he runs away to explore the dungeon, while Angelica removes her helmet to reveal that she has turned into a proper human now. She quickly puts the helmet back on to chase after Haru. On the other hand, Haru's classmates have just finished a long and rough fight with a pack of werewolves, when suddenly they feel someone coming towards them. They think it is another monster, but luckily it turns out to be Ofter and Mary. They tell everyone about the stampede and how they need Haru's help, But on learning that he got separated from the rest of the crew, Mary loses all hope. Class rep comforts her, and then tells everyone that they have no time to rest because they need to find Haru even quickly now. Meanwhile, Haru is playing the floor is lava with the dungeon. He is somehow managing the heat while crossing a bridge over the lava lake, when he almost tumbles to his death. Angelica holds him and tells him to rest in the corner, and Haru takes up the idea. He wonders how can he regain the stamina he has lost because of the heat. Suddenly, he finds a gentle breeze blowing from a hole in the wall, and he puts his head inside it and uses wind magic to help himself cool down. Coincidentally, the other end of the hole is on the floor where everyone else is, and class rep hears Haru edging to the cool wind. She calls out to him, and Haru responds. He realizes that this is the hole he fell through, and wonders if he can get out of it. He recalls that he couldn't do that the last time and asks class rep if anyone has a rope. They don't have anything to help him, but as Haru learns that they are on the 54th floor, he thinks that he can reach there quickly. Class rep stops him, and then tells him that the town is in danger. She tells him about the stampede, and then Mary and Ofter tell him that he needs to defeat the boss to end it. Haru just glances at Angelica and then tells everyone that he has already defeated the boss. Everyone is astonished to hear this, and they wonder how can there be a second wave of the stampede if the boss is defeated. The adventurer asks Haru if he is sure that he killed the boss because only killing it is the solution to the monster stampede. Haru realizes that if he is going to save the city, he needs to kill Angelica. He begins thinking about how she is just a girl who has been trapped in the dungeon this entire time, and he has formed a close bond with her now. He doesn't want to kill her, and tells everyone that he has not killed the boss. He begins thinking of a way that can keep the city safe without sending Angelica to the afterlife. He decides that he will do whatever it takes, and tells Angelica that he is going to need her help. He then declares to his classmates that he will stop the stampede himself, and they are shocked because there is no other way to stop it but killing the boss. However, class rep says that she believes in Haru because he might be a pathetic loner who makes them all worry. He pulls through whenever it is needed. She reminds everyone how Haru has saved them time and time again, which is the reason for her trust in him. Hearing her words gives Haru a fresh dose of confidence, and he swears that he will save the city as well as Angelica. With that motivation, Haru and Angelica begin to speed run the dungeon, reaching the 73rd floor in no time. They find some lizardmen there, but Haru knows that they are weak to cold, so he quickly freezes them with ice magic, and then Angelica smashes them. On the next floor, they meet some scorpions and Haru uses smoke to do pest control on them. Up next, they face a two-headed dog that is strong and swift, but Haru throws his bottled farts on its nose to completely blow away its sensitive sense of smell. The two-headed dog can't focus on the battle anymore, which makes it easy for Angelica to slash it in two. After that, Haru decides to sort out all the drop items he got from defeating the monsters, and Angelica signals him to take a short rest. He replies that he can't afford to delay since the fate of the entire city lies on his shoulders. They soon reach the 69th floor, where a hypnotizing bird uses its ability on them to put them to sleep. Haru thinks it won't affect him because of his general health skill, but he is too tired and the skill doesn't activate in time, causing him to feel really sleepy. He dozes off, but luckily, Angelica was not affected, so she carries him on her back and tells him to keep resting. On the other hand, Haru's classmate are fighting a level 100 Sphinx, which is stronger than any opponent they have faced till now. They can't manage to deal any lasting damage to it, because it instantly heals from both physical and magic damage. The adventurer named Ofter tells them that they couldn't defeat the Sphinx even if they could deal damage to it, because the rumors say that it is immortal. He explains that the Sphinx likes to ask riddles from the adventurers, and allows only those who answer them correctly. He says that attacking it was a bad idea, because now it is adamant on wiping the floor with the students. Meanwhile, Angelica has carried Haru to the 59th floor, and he is finally ready to take part in the action again. As he is trying to find a way to pass the crumbly floor, he suddenly senses a familiar presence upstairs. It turns out to be coming from his classmates, who have been utterly defeated by the Sphinx. The giant monster attacks the class rep, but then suddenly, Haru arrives on the scene and attacks it with his new fused magic gear to nullify the physical damage immunity. While his initial attack doesn't do any damage, it gives Angelica the chance to attack the Sphinx and slash its head off, killing it for good. After that, Haru and class rep stare at each other, and she welcomes him back, saying that everyone was waiting for him to return. Everyone tells him that he is late, and then class rep asks about the night with him. Haru is just about to introduce her, when the floor under his feet crumbles, and he begins falling to the depths of the dungeon again. However, he uses some Spider-Man-like moves to step on the falling rubble and comes out on the floor again. He tells everyone not to worry about him because he has got a bunch of new skills that can help him be alert against such hazards, but he jinxes himself by saying that as the ground beneath his feet breaks again. Haru is thoroughly unprepared for this and accepts his fate, but then class rep runs towards him and catches his hand. She remembers how she failed to protect him the last time, so she swears that she is not going to let him go this time. The head nerd and the head jock come there to help her pull Haru up, but they have no time to relax as the third wave of stampede is already on the floor below them. Everyone panics, and class rep asks Haru if he has a plan to save the city. He tells her that he has a plan, and Angelica is the key to that. Class rep asks him about her, but then Melly panics and says that they need to return to the city immediately. After agrees and says that they will take the warp gate to reach the surface directly, and Haru is shocked because he didn't see anything like this on his way. After tells him that he didn't see it because he was climbing up the dungeon, and the mechanism doesn't work in that case. Soon, Haru and the others reach the city gate where the guild master and others are standing guard in anticipation of the third wave of the monster rampage. Suddenly, the third wave arrives, and it is much larger than the previous ones. As the monsters flood the plains and griffons take to the sky, the adventurers crap their pants because the previous two waves were just teasers, and this is on a completely different scale. Everyone gives up the hopes of winning, but then Haru gives Angelica a signal and she goes ahead and unsheathes her sword. She stabs the ground with it, releasing a vast amount of energy that begins traveling in all directions, covering the entire city and the dungeon area within its range. Haru thinks that since Angelica truly is the boss of the dungeon, and she has effortlessly killed monsters on their way to the top, she might have absolute control over the monsters too. He is confident that her power can make all the monsters vanish at once, and his guess is proven right as the huge magic field created by Angelica deletes all the monsters from existence within seconds. Everyone is dumbfounded on seeing this, and then Haru goes to Angelica for a fist bump. He sighs in relief, saying that his plan really worked out. His classmates are even more confused now, and they ask him if this was his power. Haru tells them that it was not him but Angelica who did this miracle, and she begins acting shy. The head nerd is the only person smart enough to realize that Angelica is the dungeon emperor, and everyone else freaks out on hearing that. Haru tells them that there is no need to worry about because Angelica is totally on their side and she saved his ass dozens of times in the dungeon. The adventurers believe in Haru and accept that Angelica is not a threat to them, but the herd nerd still has some questions. He asks Haru if the female knight is really the big boss of the dungeon whose power is even greater than the boss monsters. Haru affirms, saying that Angelica is indeed the strongest one in the dungeon. He says that a lot of things happened and her level got reset, but she is still stronger than most monsters in the dungeon. He explains that he thought that her power would be enough to force all the monsters into obeying her, but they needed to get really close to them to use it. The girls ask him what happened to the monsters, because they worry that they might attack them again, and Haru says that they must be chilling in their respective floors because it was an order from the dungeon emperor. He declares that the city is safe now, and everyone's face lights up. They cheer to celebrate this occasion, and peace quickly returns to the city. The next day, Haru decides to hold an event with all the items he got from the dungeon, and soon, class rep comes there with everyone else just like he asked. They are blown away to see a collection of rare weapons and armor put on display by Haru, and he smugly announces that everything here is on special Black Friday sale. Everyone rushes to buy the gears, and the mention of the word sale gives girls the superpower to push the boys to the corner. Well, luckily, Haru had put some items aside just in case, and being a true bro, he shares them with the boys. Soon, everyone gets something, and they get busy exploring their gears. Haru is glad that their lives will be easier now, but he is also worried about Angelica. He thinks that she would have zero communication skills after spending so long in the dungeon, and he wonders if she will be able to fit in with the rest of the crew now that she is going to live with them. While Haru's friends are thinking about how generous he is for sharing his rare loot with them, he is busy counting the gold he got in exchange for the loot. Just then, class rep comes there to talk to him, and he hurriedly hides the gold before she accuses him of being a cold-blooded capitalist. She also thanks Haru for providing rare items to everyone, and as Angelica comes there, she thanks her too. She then asks him to properly introduce the female knight. Haru says that she is Angelica, a formidable skeleton warrior who was the dungeon emperor whom he defeated. Class rep asks him if he used the pheromone ring on Angelica to make her follow him, and he sighs as he explains that he never got that ring. Class rep asks him how else could he get the dungeon emperor to obey him, and Haru nervously reveals that he used the servitude skill to turn her into a servant. Class rep screams at him after hearing this and labels him a pervert. She grabs Angelica's hand and runs away, trying to rescue her from Haru, and he worries that something weird might happen between Angelica and others. Class rep leads Angelica to the girls' dorm, where everyone gets on one side like an interview panel to learn more about her. They are surprised to learn that despite being the dungeon emperor, Angelica is a 17-year-old girl like them. However, she doesn't seem really keen on talking with the girls, and class rep holds her hand to comfort her. She now understands that Haru used his servitude skill on her unknowingly, and that was what freed her from the dungeon's curse. She pities the poor girl and decides to help her bond with everyone, and for that, she immediately leads her to the bath halls with other girls. Angelica is smitten on seeing such a huge bathing pool where she can get with all the other girls. While everyone starts stripping, she has trouble taking off her armor. Class rep goes to help her, thinking that even though Angelica is a skeleton, every girl deserves a good wash. However, when she finds a normal human leg underneath her stockings, she is dumbfounded like the other girls. They help her remove her armor fully, and their jaws drop to the floor as they find that Angelica is a pretty blonde bombshell. Meanwhile, Haru is relaxing in his room, thinking that even though he didn't find the pheromone ring, his level went up by 6, and he earned a lot of useful skills too. He thinks that since he could not have ended the monster stampede without Angelica's help, he is not strong enough, and he should train some more. The next day, he enters the inn very cheerfully and asks the class rep if he can go back to the forest for some errand. Class rep realizes that he still doesn't know the truth about Angelica, and she wants to keep this pervert away from her, so she permits him to go to the forest as long as he returns on time. Haru is delighted to hear that and asks Angelica to come along, fearing that she will get bored in the city. She is ready to come with him, but class rep freaks out, thinking that the two of them will be alone. She tries to stop Haru, but then begins wondering why the thought of him being alone with a girl got her panties in a bunch. She just tells him to take care, and Haru takes his leave with that. Once he reaches the forest, he tries out his new skill called Phase, that turns him into the Flash for a couple seconds. He accidentally runs over a cliff because he can't control the speed, but uses his abilities to nail a soft landing. Just then, Angelica comes there following him, and she slips on some mushrooms to fall off the cliff. Haru catches her and remarks that she is surprisingly heavy for a pile of bones, and she gets embarrassed. After that, he returns to his cave and relaxes in his jacuzzi, teasingly asking Angelica to join him, knowing that she will refuse this suggestion because she is a girl despite being a skeleton. However, Angelica is legally bound to obey his commands, so she comes to the bathroom wearing just a towel, and Haru freaks out. He doesn't take long to realize that she is the knight, and takes her to his room to learn more about her. Turns out that she is just like Komi-san and can't even speak confidently, but she does some gestures that explain her story. Haru learns that when she wore the cursed armor, it created some flesh around her bones so that it could stick to that, but then the purifying bangle neutralized it. The other two treasures he gave her helped her get her soul back, and she was completely revived, but after being trapped in the dungeon as a skeleton for 100 years, she has lost her ability to talk. Haru realizes that he is responsible for all of this, and Angelica is following him around to repay her debt. He tells her that she is free to do whatever she wants now, so she doesn't have to be with him always. She passionately refuses that suggestion and then clings to him, not willing to let go. Haru understands that she needs to stay by someone's side after all these years of loneliness, so he starts giving her head pats and then tells her funny stories till she falls asleep. After 10 days of living under the same roof, Angelica has grown more expressive around Haru, who asks her to spar with him because he has a new skill he wants to try. She agrees, and Haru asks her to attack him first. She obeys, and he uses the phase skill to dodge all her attacks precisely. He then decides to use the skill to attack her, but Angelica is much faster than him and easily lands a blow to his head. She is worried that she may have hit too hard and killed the remaining 2 brain cells he has. But Haru tells her not to worry because this is just training so that he can become stronger than her. After the training, he catches some fish and tells Angelica that he is going to cook some delicious hot pot tonight. He teaches her how to properly cut a fish, and she blushes on finding him so close to her. After that, they have dinner, and Angelica looks suspiciously bashful the entire time. She suddenly grabs Haru's hand and drags him to her room and makes him sit on the bed. She crawls behind him and puts her hand on his back, and he perfectly understands that she is trying to give him a massage and nothing freaky. Angelica is glad that he understood her so well, and then proceeds to give him a full-body massage. But somehow, she hits all the bad spots and make his joints ache like they are rusted. Haru stays quiet because he doesn't want to hurt her, and Angelica is still not satisfied in her quest to show him some gratitude. He asks her to accompany him if that's the case, and they head outside to watch stars. Haru pats her head to thank her for being so caring, and Angelica suddenly turns red. She gets away from him, and then nervously tries to say thank you, but the words don't leave her mouth. She is embarrassed, but Haru consoles her, saying that he understands that she is trying her best. The next day, they head back to the city, and it starts raining on the way. Haru grabs Angelica's hand as they start running. Once they reach the city, the rain has gone, but they are still holding hands, and the girls start teasing them, asking if they have gotten that close. The girls swarm Angelica to learn what happened between her and Haru, while the boys surround Haru and call him a traitor for getting a girlfriend when the rest of them are single. He shoos them all away, and then Angelica comes to him. She tries to say something, but he asks her to relax and heads towards the dungeon. Suddenly, Angelica asks him to wait in the faintest whisper, and the astonished Haru turns around immediately. She thanks him in another faint whisper, and then heads back to the girl gang. On seeing her like this, Haru realizes that no matter how many people surround you all the time, at the end of the day, everyone is a loner struggling to survive in the world. That is why his faith in staying a loner for the foreseeable future grows even intense, and he decides to head on his own adventures.